In this video, I'm going to show you 4 ways to import invoices, customer invoices, into QuickBooks Online. Now, I'm talking about the invoices you issue to your customers and not the bills you get from your vendors or suppliers, which are also called invoices. But in QuickBooks, it's actually called a bill. It's part of the accounts payable workflow. And we're going to have an entirely different video talking about how to import vendor bills or supplier bills. So let's talk about the 4 methods that we have to import invoices in QuickBooks Online. Method number 1, we're going to talk about how to import a simple list of brand new customers with lump sum amounts of the opening balances that you have that you want to import into QuickBooks. Maybe you're coming from another accounting system, maybe you're starting from scratch, and you just want to bring in the customer names and the total dollar amount that those customers owe you so you can import them as a single lump sum invoice for each of your customers. The second method is a CSV import that actually works across all versions of QuickBooks as well, that allows you to import a little bit more detail. You can import individual invoice numbers with actual separate invoice dates and with even detailed line items in each of the invoices. This is probably going to be the most popular, the most used feature. Now, method number 3, this one actually only works in QuickBooks Online Advanced. This is the highest version subscription of QuickBooks Online, but it's really cool. It has a batch enter feature that allows you to do a combination between importing from a CSV file, also being able to copy and paste on the fly from your spreadsheet software, whether it's Excel or Google Sheets, and being able to edit those things on the fly prior to importing. It's really neat, but it only works in QuickBooks Online Advanced, and most people don't have QuickBooks Online Advanced, so they might have to resort to method 1 or 2. And the last method, the 4th method, is when everything else I explained doesn't work. Maybe there's some limitations. Maybe you have a high volume of transactions you want to import and want to work a little bit more in an automated fashion. Then you want to bring a third-party app. You're going to have to pay a separate subscription for a third-party app. We're going to use Transaction Pro Importer by Rightworks, which is a very easy to use app you'll see in the video. And you might resort to having to use that 4th method. So let's jump right to it. Okay, let's get started with the first method. So for some context, let's say I have this spreadsheet that contains 3 columns: customer name, amount, and as of date. This is the date in which you want to bring in this lump sum opening balance for that specific customer. Now, you could bring in more fields. There's actually more fields available to map, but I'm just working with the simplest possible terms with the 3 required fields, which is the customer name, the amount, and the as of date. So this is the exact spreadsheet that we're going to work with, and we're going to import these accounts receivable or these opening balances into QuickBooks Online. Now, for some context, I'm going to run the balance sheet here and show you that as of December 31st, 2022, I don't have anything in my balance sheet. I have no transactions. So you're going to see accounts receivable populate in there once we finish importing those transactions. So let me click on the gear menu on the top right of the screen. And then I'm going to click on Import Data. And then in this specific case, we're not going to click on invoices. That's going to be the second method, actually. We're actually going to click on customers. So we're going to click on this customers option. And then we're going to click on browse to go find that spreadsheet that I showed you earlier on the screen. Click on browse, find the spreadsheet, click on open. And then once it shows up that it's been loaded, then I simply just click on next on the bottom right of the screen and then go to the next page. Then you're going to see the mapping area where you're going to get to pick the customer name, which is a required field. So that matches my spreadsheet customer name. Now I have a column that says amount, and QuickBooks calls this opening balance. So just make sure you understand that it's called amount in my spreadsheet, but opening balance in QuickBooks. And then the as of date, it understood opening balance date. So it's only 3 fields being mapped. And as you can tell, there's a lot other fields that you can map with this specific method. So then I want to click on next on the bottom right of the screen. And then I'm going to get a quick preview for the data that is going to be imported. Now with these specific opening balance dates, it's very picky in terms of the exact format that it wants. I wanted to show you that because, not all spreadsheets are made equal. And sometimes we have to do sort of fancy things with these spreadsheets. So again, this is the actual format. It's telling you right there what format you want to follow, okay? And then also it's not gonna allow to use that negative. So I'm gonna go ahead and change the format here of the dollar amounts, and I'm just gonna change it to general. I'm gonna get rid of the signs. I'll keep the negative there just so you can see. And then I'll select these here and I'll change the formatting. And this is kind of the challenging part, is that you're gonna have to play with Excel and get a very specific format change here. And there's multiple ways of doing it, but there is a built-in function in Excel for reformatting it in that specific format that it wants. And then I'm gonna go ahead and save it. And then I'm gonna go back here, go back, browse, select the file one more time, because remember I changed it and now I saved it. Go to next, next, and let me just go back for a second, make sure the mapping is being catched correctly. So there's my mapping. Then I'm gonna go to next. Okay, now it sees the information, and this negative is going to give me an error. So I click on import. Oh, there's no error on the import, so they actually fixed that. So we'll see exactly how negatives get handled. Actually, for a moment, I thought that negatives wouldn't allow it to be imported. So that's great. So let's go back into the balance sheet one more time. We'll pull up a balance sheet, and then we'll go back and pull up data up to 12/31/2022. Click on run report, and there is my accounts receivable. Now, just for sanity check, let me select all of these and see if these match. They do match, 32,269. So the negative definitely went in there. So I can actually click on the $38,000, click on that, and then get to see all the details of what was imported. And essentially you see all of these transactions get imported as invoices, and specifically the negative came in as a credit memo. So it's pretty cool. So a credit memo is basically opposite of an invoice. Now you will notice that everything gets put into like a generic item called sales, and then the description says opening balance, pretty much letting you know that none of these things contain any sort of details. It just goes into a generic income account, and you can go back in there, open them, and edit them if you want to. But if you were going to do that, you might as well do the second method that we're about to discuss. But that gives you a general idea, more or less, on how to import these things. And again, if these total amounts represented multiple invoice numbers with multiple invoice dates, then you wouldn't use this method. You would use the different method. So the next method we're going to use, we're going to click on the gear menu, then we're going to click on import data, and then we're going to click on invoices. We're actually going to import via the invoice module. And then the import module actually gives you a little sample file to use as an example, which is actually the best thing to do, is to open that sample file and get acquainted with the actual spreadsheet that they give you. So let me bring in the spreadsheet they give us. I'll zoom in so we can see a little bit better, bigger, okay? And I'll delete these bottom notes here. We actually don't need those bottom notes. And essentially, take a look at the format of this spreadsheet. So we have invoice number. Notice that there's the same invoice number repeated 4 times because that's 4 lines of data. So essentially, we have customer Chris Smith. There's an invoice date. There's a due date. There's terms. Then we have items, specific items that we're gonna import. So specific line items. We have some of them have descriptions, some don't. We have quantity, item rates. Has quite a bit of detail. And as long as these invoice numbers are all bunched together, you can skip some of these lines, like customer name and invoice date, because it assumes that it really only needs it on the very top line of that group of transactions. So let's go ahead and save that one, and let's see kind of what happens. So a couple of things, and I did this on purpose. It's going to give me an error. These customers don't exist already in QuickBooks, so it won't know how to import them. And these items might also not exist, and these terms might also not exist. So there's a whole bunch of things that it might just not take because the data is not already in QuickBooks, in the QuickBooks database. So we'll discuss how to fix all that. So let's go back in here. Let's click on Browse. We'll get that spreadsheet or that CSV file. Click on Next. It's going to give me my mapping. And notice that all my columns are mapped beautiful. The spreadsheet column with the QuickBooks column. Only the ones that have this little asterisk are the ones that are required. And you can remove some of them if you actually don't want. Like if you don't want the memo, you can unselect that one from the mapping. So you could leave it blank if you wanted to. Like you actually don't need to map it. But as long as they map, then you're good to go. Then you click on next. And then if there's an error, like an error such as the formatting or the customers don't exist or the items don't exist, that's all going to give you, obviously it's all going to give you errors. So you need to make sure that your spreadsheet is compatible with this system. So let's play with the spreadsheet a little bit and go back to this. So we'll go back, open up the spreadsheet, and let's follow the instructions. So the first one is the invoice date doesn't match the format. What it wants is month, date, and year. So here's our invoice date. We'll select this right here and go into format cells and then go to date and make sure this is using standard dating format and then click OK. And then in this specific case, just this data is just plain wrong. It's just, maybe, it's using an international sort of method here. So let's do 12/13/2022. Essentially, I'm just cleaning up the data in the sample spreadsheet, which they give you a very weird one for some reason. So this one's fine. And then this one's also. So 12/13/2022. And this one actually what they meant to put is 12/11/2022. Okay. So once everything here is in a sort of dating format, I can tell my Excel that this actually is a dating format. Okay. So everything should be clean dating format. Due date, let's just pick the same thing and do +30. Make it pretty simple in the formatting here. And just cleaning up my spreadsheet so my spreadsheet makes sense. And just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to make everything here net 30 terms. Okay, so that way we can kind of get a little bit farther ahead in the process without spending too much time sort of bored dealing with Excel type of things. So we cleaned up the dates, the due dates, and the terms. So I'm going to go ahead and click on save. And we're going to try this one more time. And this is not going to be ready, but at least gets us a little bit closer. So I'm going to go back, click on browse, pick that spreadsheet again, the one that we just edited, click on next. Okay, same thing with the mapping. Now notice that there's a way for you to quickly tell it if there's, so in contrast with the other screen, you can tell it if there's a different formatting in this case. So in this case, this is the formatting. It's month, date, year. That's the way it's supposed to be. So if you happen to have it in a different format, you can quickly change it in there. But I already fixed it on the spreadsheet. So I'm going to go to next. And then now we still have errors, but they're different errors. So this one's telling me, hey, these customers don't exist. And then here's telling me, hey, these items don't exist. So we'll go and create those items to fix that. And then the service date doesn't match. And we could also remove the service date altogether because we actually don't need service date at all. So let's go back into the spreadsheet here. And let's see if we just delete the service date. Let's just ignore that, even though you could use service date if you want to. So that will get us a little bit closer. And then next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create all these items. So while we're at it, kind of a sort of a bonus here is I can import my items as well because QuickBooks has an item import feature. So let me create a new spreadsheet really quick. And again, we're just simplifying the process here instead of me going into QuickBooks and creating all those items or just assuming that you already would have those items, you would just skip this. So let's do item name. In this case, we'll paste those items in there. We'll get rid of any duplicates, of course, because we don't need to have any duplicates in there. So we have trimming, design, gardening, soil, rocks, and that's it. That's all really all that we need. So we have an entirely different spreadsheet for our items that we're importing. And we could create the items, let me X out of this. We could create the items on our own. So we can just go into sales, products and services, and we can come here in new, and we can go into service, and we can create our soil item or whatever it happens to be, right? And this is going into our sales account. So this could be done manually. You can create all your items manually. But just to kind of like make things easier, I'm going to use the import feature for items or products and services, which I could also click on gear, click on import data. And inside the same page that we've been doing this, I can go to products and services and import my items through there. And this is going to be a common thing that you're going to be dealing with when you import invoices, you might need to import your customer list first, a detailed customer list with addresses and that sort of thing. And then you want to import a detailed item list. This is normal. This is going to happen quite often. So we'll pick an item list really quick, and we don't have all the information that we need on the import, but I'm going to show you the process. So I'm going to go to next, and then we can map the item name. And we also are supposed to have an item type, and we're also supposed to have an income account. Those are actually required fields. But I'm going to click on next, and then notice that everything is pretty much preset for me. I just have to make sure that I have these things preset. So just to simplify my life, I'm literally selecting them here. But normally you would just have them in your spreadsheet. You would just have an entire column here for type, and this would be called service, right? And then you would bring that down, and then you would have account, and then this would go into sales, and then you would bring that down. So you would have your spreadsheet pre-prepared, even with descriptions and that sort of thing, if you want to bring it in, so you don't have to come in this page and do all the, click down and choose. It's only 5 items, so it's pretty simple. So I'm going to go to import, and it should give me an error for soil because the soil is already in my list. So perfect, no problem. Now all my items are officially in QuickBooks. So when I'm going to go back and import my invoices and select my invoice database here, my list of invoice database, I'm going to click on next, all my mapping, and then click on next. I should have now less errors. So now I'm down to only the customers cannot be matched. So at that point, I would probably pause and import your customer list. If you have a big detail like address and emails and that sort of thing, you may want to use the customer import feature, which we just used. We actually just show you how to do that with the first method, but you would do that without bringing in an opening balance. So just bring in the customers cleanly, and that's it. For the sake of simplicity here, we're actually going to pick the feature where we can create the customer on the fly. There's a little checkbox here that says add new customers into QuickBooks. So of course the customers will be created without any details, no addresses, nothing like that. But at least the customers get created for you. So then I can go to the next screen, and then I won't have any more errors. It actually says, hey, we went ahead and imported the invoices for you, and we created some new customers. And I'm going to click on complete import, and then we just wait. It takes a minute or less. All the imports come in. If there's the invoices already exist, you're going to get an error. Okay. And there's a couple of ways around that. So one, you can physically go in there and just fix the invoice numbers in your spreadsheet if you want them to come in with a different invoice number. Or what's really neat is we can go into the gear menu, account and settings, and then I believe it's under sales. We can change where it says here custom transaction numbers. If we turn that off and click on save, then actually QuickBooks will assign an invoice number for all those invoices. So that's actually more useful for importing sort of real-time information. Whereas if you're importing sort of past information, you would probably be respecting those invoice numbers that you have in your spreadsheet. So I'm just kind of showing you both methods. So in this particular method, QuickBooks will assign brand new set of invoice numbers to those invoices. So you have to keep in mind, you need to be acutely aware to exactly what is it that you want to do. So I'm going to click on OK, and then I'm going to go back, open up a spreadsheet one more time. So we have Chris Smith that had a 4-line invoice, and then we have Karuna that had a 2-line invoice, and Karuna again that had a 3-line invoice. So we had Karuna with 2 invoices and Chris with a single invoice with 4 lines. So let's go into sales, invoices, and then we can get to see the invoices are here. So let's find a couple of invoices here. So let's go into maybe Karuna. Let's go into customers. Might be easier to go in here and search for Karuna. So there's my Karuna. Let me click on Karuna there. And there's my 2 invoices, invoice 1007 and 1005. Again, they might not match my list here because the other invoice numbers were taken. So we changed that setting so QuickBooks would just assign an invoice number for me. Again, if you wanted to bring explicitly the invoices on your spreadsheet and not conflict with another invoice in QuickBooks, make sure you would clean those up and fix them in the spreadsheet first. So let's open up the first invoice here. Let's edit the invoice and see that we have 1, 2, 3 lines of data with a lot of details here. So tons of details here on this invoice. If I X out of that and open up, let's go back into Karuna. So let's type Karuna. There she is. And let's open up the other invoice and click on edit. And there's going to be 2 lines on this specific one. So I'm going to X out of that. And I think I have another customer. It was Chris Smith or something like that. So Chris Smith, there we go. Let's go into Chris Smith invoice, edit that. There should be 4 lines of data. There we go. And some have descriptions, some didn't. They all have quantities, rates, and amount. So that's method number 2 for importing invoices. I'm now going to switch to a QuickBooks Online Advanced account. I was actually working on a simple start version of QuickBooks Online because the first 2 methods work across all versions of QuickBooks Online. But this specific company file actually uses QuickBooks Online Advanced that has a more sort of fancy importer feature for invoices. So let's jump on this one. Okay, let's go into the new button here and then click on Batch Transactions. And again, if you don't see batch transactions in your own QuickBooks Online file, it's because you don't have QuickBooks Online Advanced. You need that highest version of QuickBooks Online to use this specific feature. So here in the drop-down menu, we have all the different types of transactions that we can import into QuickBooks Online. Invoices, deposits, sales receipts, bills, those are your vendor bills, or the invoices your vendors or suppliers send you, expenses, checks, and QuickBooks is adding new transaction types to this page all the time. So we have these invoices, and then we have different options here. We have create, modify, or delete. So for now, we're going to do create, which is for us to bring in the information or import the information. And then we're going to click on this little options gear. It's really important. And under options, we get to pick which of these fields we want to import. And then all the way in the bottom, it'll tell you which fields you cannot import into currently. So you can check any of these. And for example, I'm just going to uncheck all the ones that are not required for a second, just so we can just strictly work with the required fields. So I'm unchecking everything here, everything that's not grayed out. So we're going to have a very simple kind of an import section here. So we're going to go to apply. And now we have essentially very clean 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns in total. And you can tweak this. So we can go to options here and then maybe use, let's see what we have. Let's do quantity, description, and rate. Because those things are typically used quite a bit. So we click on apply. Now we have a little bit more complete importing system. So I'm just going to really quick go to import CSV and then download the sample file. It's a little bit slightly different sample file than the one on the other example. Actually, it's the exact same one. So I made the mistake. I thought it was going to be different. So we'll work off the exact same sample file here. And I'll just change a couple of dollar amounts here. So let's see. I'm going to change this quantity to 3 and this item rate to 10. And then I'll just do a quick formula here to make sure that these dollar amounts are being calculated correctly. We'll do 24.60 and then 6.10 and then 7.10, and you get the point here. We're just modifying every single thing here. So we're going to get slightly different invoices. So now I'm going to update these formulas to make sure this stuff is all correct the way it's supposed to be. And let's go back into QuickBooks again and see what fields we have. So we have invoice number, customer, email, terms. All these things came back. Oops. Let's uncheck these again. Not fun. I don't know why I did that, but let's uncheck these again one more time. We'll keep description, quantity, rate, we said, and we'll uncheck the rest of them. So I don't know why it did that. That's QuickBooks is weird sometimes. Like I had it perfect and then it changed it for me. Okay, so invoice number, customer, invoice date, product and service. So I'm going to make sure, because this is a copy and paste interaction, I'm going to make sure that my spreadsheet looks identical. So we have invoice number, check. We have customer name, check. Then we have invoice date, check. And then we have product and service. So we'll insert a column here, and then we'll bring in our items, which are our products and services. and we'll bring those guys back in there. And the next one is description. So let's insert column here, cut the description and bring in the description. The next one is quantities. We actually don't need any of these things because we're not using those. We don't need any of these things. And there we go. So now we're down to exactly what QuickBooks has. So invoice, customer, invoice date, item, item description, quantity, item rate, item amount. Okay, good. So I think that we can cross our fingers and see if this is going to work. So let's copy all this information. Is simply just copy and paste. So we're going to hit copy. So a regular, simple clipboard, come back into here. And then we are going to right click and paste. See what happens. And cross our fingers, see if that works. Something didn't quite work. Don't know why. The customer wasn't in QuickBooks. Let's just check one more time. So Chris Smith is not in QuickBooks. That's curious. Let's see. Let's paste that. Oh, of course, this is a new company file. That's why Chris Smith is not in here. So that's one of the challenges that you're going to have here is that dating format didn't work. Product and service didn't work because it's an entirely different QuickBooks Online file. Okay, so I would have to go in QuickBooks now, make sure that my customers are being imported first, my items are being imported first, and then we can go from there. For simplicity's sake, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab an actual customer name from my database and an actual item from my database and just clean it up in Excel. So let's grab a customer here at random. We'll pick this one. Let's pick that one, and then we'll grab this information, go into the spreadsheet and paste that in there. Let's grab another customer here at random. Let's grab Angie, copy that and paste that in here and paste that in here. And then we'll grab another customer here at random, Boris Jones, copy that, go back in here and paste it. So again, we're just making sure that my spreadsheet actually matches what my QuickBooks is supposed to be. Then I'll look at my products and services, and then I'll pick this thing called Design It 11, just to simplify our life here. And then we'll grab and bring this item here called Design 11, and just to simplify things, that's the item that we'll use for every single item. And then the invoice date, I think the formatting requires to have the four digit year. It's very, very picky. So we're going to come in here and right click and go into format. So this is an Excel thing. And then we'll go and see if we can do some sort of custom. Let's see if there's some sort of custom option here. I guess this one will do. Click OK. Okay, beautiful. Now we're thinking that could work. So now let's copy this information over. Click copy. And then we'll just, for the sake of simplicity, we'll cancel out of this and kind of just start over. Start with a clean slate, just in case we're not confused by the data that's already in there. And now we're going to right click here and click on paste. And then I'll cross our fingers now, see if that works, and that worked. So that brought all the information in here. This is a preview screen. Again, we can make any changes on the fly if something didn't import correctly, which was pretty neat. You could change any of these things on the fly. Only issue that you have is if you change any of these things, the prices can change and that sort of thing, because QuickBooks has a different price for that database. So again, if you didn't want that to change, then you would have to change that in your spreadsheet prior to changing it here. So you want to be very careful with that, manipulating the data after the fact, because it won't be true to your spreadsheet. So at that point, then we'll click on save, and that will import all the transactions into QuickBooks Online. If you have any errors, you can click on the little arrow that says, in this case, select a date that you've started tracking inventory item. So in this particular case, it's because these are inventory items. And when you create your inventory items, you give it a sort of a starting date to as of when you'll be able to bring those items into any transaction. And these items were brought in afterwards. So that was an example of me using a inventory item. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick an item that's not an inventory item. So I'll pick this thing here called tree removal as the item. So I'm going to go back and just X out of this screen one more time, go into my spreadsheet. And again, I like the fact that these kind of issues happen on the fly. So you get an idea for the sort of issues you're going to encounter. It's not straightforward. It's a lot of moving parts. If you're bringing stuff with inventory, you have to make sure that inventory was created prior to that, there's those transaction dates and that sort of thing. So let's copy and paste this back into the batch action screen. We'll try this one more time. Paste that. Cross our fingers one more time. See if that works. Okay, that worked in there. Now we're going to click on save. Okay, see what happens. I got another error that I can't identify. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to import via CSV with that same file that I was working on just now, and then bring it in, see what happens. The screen is all crazy. Okay. And now the way it brings it in now, it actually segregates it and it hides these lines for me. And actually, I know exactly what happened. It's when you actually just do a straight copy and paste, it assumes that every one of these rows is a separate transaction number, that's part of the issue. So in this screen, you actually have to tell it that this is a new line item, and you have to click here and click on new line item, and it grays them out for you. And that's how the system recognizes that they're part of the same transaction. So it's definitely different behavior. And I literally just discovered that by using the import feature instead of the copy and paste feature, because I wasn't noticing that specific situation. So this is a very specific example where this is actually not going to work with a straight copy and paste if you don't know the intricacies of the system, and you might need to start with a sort of CSV import and then maybe copy and paste different individual things from here. And then finally, can I cross my fingers now and see if it's going to import? This screen is so quirky. All right, so let me go to save. And okay, got one in. Let's see what this tells me. We still have the same issue with the invoice numbers. So yeah, so that's the same problem we had before. We'll just add a couple of random numbers there. Click on save, and hopefully that should finish importing. That was an extra line that I added there. That wasn't consequential. Finally, something imported. So let me X out of this, and then I'll go into my customers, and then let's look for Angie. I had a customer Angie there. Let's open her up, and then let's see. There's the invoice that we imported, actually 2 invoices that we imported. So we can edit the invoice and see what we brought in. And there we go. There's tree removal and all the descriptions, all the quantity and rate. So I actually don't love that third method. It's not my favorite one. As you could tell, I even struggled doing the import, and it really is because it's just designed in a very strange way, not very intuitive. But it actually works. Like if you're at it and you read the errors and you just keep trying over and over, you'll find a way to make it work. That's why I like the first 2 methods so much better. And as a matter of fact, that's why I like using a third-party app to import so much better. I don't think that it's worth upgrading to QuickBooks Online Advanced to get that batch enter feature, because it's more time consuming to learn the quirks of it versus using a third-party app, which is going to save you so much time. So let's jump into a third-party app so we can show you how that works. Okay, so for this specific example, we're going to use an app called Transaction Pro imported by Rightworks. So I'm just going to go straight into the URL. I'll put that URL in the description so you can go straight into the 7-day trial page. It's going to be much easier than trying to figure out how to add it through any other method. Like you go straight into this page is like the best way to do it. So I'm going to click on I'm using QuickBooks Online. And then I'm going to click on sign in with Intuit. That's how I can log in into the free trial, specifically using my existing QuickBooks Online account as the login mechanism. Then I'm going to click on add new subscription, monthly, and then pick which one works best for you. And it really depends on how many company files you'll be importing to and how much volume, rows of data you want to import. So for now, let's say we're just going to use this lowest version here. Then we're going to click on connect to QuickBooks so we can tell it which company file we'll be connecting this Transaction Pro into. and we're going to pick our QuickBooks Online file from our list. If we have multiple QuickBooks Online files that we manage, you would pick one from the multiple you have. If you just have one, it'll just show one. So I picked my company file, then I click on Next and Connect. And that should connect my Transaction Pro into QuickBooks Online so I can start importing transactions into it. I'm going to click on Companies and then go to where it says Go to App. Not very intuitive. It's just kind of very techie type of app. So we'll go to, now we're in Transaction Pro, and then you have a couple of things. We can import data, we can export data, and we can delete file. For now, we're going to import because that's what we're doing here. So I'm going to click on Import File. Okay, and then here's a list of all the things you can import. So you can import chart of accounts, import bank statements, you can import invoices, journal entries, all sorts of transactions that you can import. For now, we're just going to pick invoices, which is what we're doing. So I'm going to click on Invoices, and then I'm going to click and I'm going to drag and drop the file into this, this area here. So I'm going to use this exact same file that we have here. I'm going to drag and drop this same file in here. But in order to make this a little bit different, I'm going to change some of the customer names. So let's go back and pick another customer name from my company file. Let me switch back to the company file I was working on, which is the simple company file. And let's just go into our customer list and grab a couple customers from here. So we got Linda Higgs. Let's copy Linda Higgs' name and go back into our spreadsheet and replace, just paste in here. And we'll click and drag that down. Let's just make everything Linda Higgs, make it easier. So we'll click on Save. And now we'll go back into Transaction Pro, and then we're going to select the file, drop it in there, click on Select File and Sheet. Then we'll click on Import Sheet, and then we'll do our mapping. So my reference number is my invoice number, my customer is my customer name, transaction date, invoice date. Again, we're matching our spreadsheet to the fields that are importable in Transaction Pro. We'll go down here to the item, should be here somewhere. There's my line item. That's going to be this item, product, and service. There's my description, and there's my quantity. Obviously, a lot more of a techie of an app. And then line amount, or actually line, let's do unit price first, item rate, and then line amount. Okay, perfect. So you can see all the fields are importable. There's a lot more fields you can import via Transaction Pro or third-party app versus doing the built-in import system. So it's good for you to sort of check out and kind of see, hey, what can I import with the built-in system? What can I import with a third-party app? So you can decide, is it worth it for me to pay a separate app to be able to import transactions into QuickBooks Online? So I'm going to click on Preview and Import. Then you're going to get this little spreadsheet looking thing, kind of walking you through all the data that's going to be imported. Notice that there's an options button, and there's a couple of interesting things. You want to go through all these options to see if any of these things are useful, like automatically import a customer name, automatically create a new item. All these things are actually available for you to sort of tweak in the settings if you start getting errors on the import. Okay, so now I'm going to click on Import, and then click on Yes. We're going to wait to see what happens. And for large volume, and when you already have sort of a pre-formatted spreadsheet that you kind of know how it's going to be imported, this is always going to be better. And you also get errors if there's an issue that happens. So let's see what kind of errors we have here. So we're having errors with the invoice number. So same sort of issue we were having before, just the invoice numbers are off. So I can change them on the spreadsheet, import them again, or I can just change them here. So I'm just going to copy that here and paste so I can fix on the fly, or again, you probably want to fix these things. Really, it's in the spreadsheet itself, right? Because you're supposed to save time by having this information already separated. Okay, so again, remember that I didn't know that I had these invoice numbers in QuickBooks Online already. So let's try that. Now they all have individual, separate invoice numbers, but I made all the ones that are the same transaction. I made them the same number so QuickBooks knows to bunch them together into a same transaction. So let's go into import. I'll hit yes. Cross our fingers, see what happens now. And there we go. All your data was imported successfully. So let's go back into QuickBooks. We'll refresh Linda Higgs and we should see a lot more invoices in here now. Here we go. All the invoices that we imported. If I click on any of these and click on edit, I should see the data that was imported straight from the spreadsheet. So that gives you essentially 4 methods, 4 ways to import transactions into QuickBooks Online. The third-party app method, whether you use Transaction Pro or any other system, and I'll put the link to Transaction Pro in the description. So if you want to do a 7-day trial yourself as well, welcome to do so. For larger volume, it's going to be much better. The errors that you get in the third-party app are a lot more precise. And essentially, for a very long time before these other methods existed, a third-party app was the only way to import data into QuickBooks Online. Now, it will probably continue to be the king until Intuit figures out how to have their own easy-to-use, complete with every field import method. Okay, unfortunately, the built-in methods, they kind of work, and you saw the video, you saw all the landmines that I stepped on, and you saw all the things that needed to be tweaked. And you should be able to decide for yourself which method works better for you. So I show you all the methods so you can decide. My recommendation is always try the built-in methods. And if that doesn't work, go for the third-party app because that's going to be probably the most foolproof way. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you on the next one.